Okay, and I am admitting everybody now. And there we go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dominic Zerlo, and I'm with the Department of Health, and we are here to administratively support this committee, which is the Propagation Committee. And the chair is Chris Peskuski. And so I will turn it on over to Chris. And Chris, I'll bring up the PowerPoint here in just a moment.
Thank you. Well, Dominic's bringing up the PowerPoint. As always, I like to start these meetings off with just 30 seconds to create a container of compassion in a world full of chaos. So you all sit with me in silence for that 30 seconds. Thank you, everyone. All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to our third Propagation Committee. You all know who I am, an ambassador to the Heroic Arts Project, the chair of this committee, and I'm on the advisory board. Today, we're going to go over, continue working on that propagation outline. There's been some new language changed and added, and I really want to start kind of drilling down on that if we can. This is always a loose agenda too. If we need to go off on a different direction, I'm more than willing to go where we need to go to solve what we need to solve. So after that, we'll go into, hopefully we have sunset clause language from somebody. I found Colorado's definition of a batch, which we talked about last week. And if other people have batch definitions, we can go over those. I added some other definitions that might be helpful from Brett, and we have time for proposals and other discussions. So with that said, please introduce yourselves. When you introduce yourselves, please let us know if you're from New Mexico and any affiliations that you have. Remember, if you don't introduce yourself, you are not able to vote if we do end up voting on something today. So please take time to introduce yourselves.
Okay,
Eric,
first up, we have Eric.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, my apologies.
That's quite all right, Ishmael. Welcome back. Eric, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Eric Baca, and I am a resident of New Mexico, and I don't have any conflicts of interest, and I'm returned. This is my third meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Craig, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
My name is Gregory Evans. I'm here as an independent researcher. I live in Santa Fe. Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. Esteban, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
Hey everybody, good to see you all again. This is Esteban Hernandez with the New Mexico Mycology Guild, as well as New Mexico Fungi. I'm a resident here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Just wanted to let you know, Chris, I am going to be listening in today, but I may have to come in and out a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Esteban. Excuse me. Priscilla, your mic has been enabled. Please unmute yourself when you're ready to speak.
My name is Priscilla Smith, and I'm with Crystal Clear Analytics, which is a cannabis laboratory in Summer Park.
Thank you, Priscilla.
I'm sorry, Priscilla, can you restate who you're with? I couldn't hear you.
Priscilla, I've enabled your mic once again.
Crystal Clear Analytics.
Thank you.
Finally, I think we have Brenda with their hand up. Brenda, please, when you're ready.
Everyone. Thanks, Jorge. I'm Brenda Burgard. I am chairing the education and training for the Psilocybin Medical Advisory Board, and I'm here to support the team here in the advisory board and lend any comments or an ear to what's being said here in the meeting today. Thank you for having me, Chris. Bye.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. And we have some introductions in the chat. I'll just, for the sake of the minutes, repeat them. So Manuel says, hello, my name is Manuel Jago. I'm from New Mexico. Thanks and happy to be here. James Brown. Hello, everyone. I'm James Brown, pharmacist, I believe. Psilocybin facilitator trained, a New Mexico U.S. Navy veteran. Hello, my name is Kayla. I'm from New Mexico. I am a home health care provider. Gregory Evans, restate the company name, please. Oh, Matthew A. My name is Matthew Armstrong. I'm from New Mexico, no affiliations. Eric Barlow. I am originally from Idaho, but I've lived in Las Cruces for the past 4 years. This is my second propagation meeting. I have no affiliations. Gregory says, Priscilla, is that crystal clear? I think that was a question there. In any case, finally, we have a comment there from Dan Jennings. Hi, I'm Dan Jennings, on the board and chair of the Research and Continuous Improvement Committee. Thank you very much for that. And finally, we have Brett Phelps with their hand up. Brett, I've enabled your mic. Please speak when ready.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Brett Phelps. I am an attorney based out of Las Vegas, New Mexico, living in Mora, and doing everything I can to help promote the program, help establish it, and especially to establish rural access for us folks living way outside of the major centers. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, Ben Edwards, I have enabled your microphone. Please speak when ready.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My chat still isn't working. It says it's only available during the meeting, and I logged off and back on, and it's still saying that, just FYI. I am from New Mexico. I live in Taos, and I've been here most of my life, about 50 years in New Mexico. And I work in soil mycology, land restoration, and I've been involved in psilocybin ceremonies for about 10, 12 years and doing other indigenous practices for over 30 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. And finally, we have Tay Davis. Hi, my name is Tay Davis. I'm in New Mexico, no affiliations. So I believe that is everyone, Chris. So just to let you know.
Excellent. Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and thank you so much, all of you who introduced yourselves and didn't, for coming and participating and supporting this. We need everybody to make this program as best as we can. So on another note, Brett, have you ever considered, taking a career up in radio after you're done with your legal work? It's just can you, there we go. Can we go ahead and bring up the document, the propagation outline, and we'll start digging back into this.
Give me just a moment to switch documents. Okay, should be able to see the document now. I'll increase the font size. So for those who are waiting, it usually takes a minute or two to switch over into the how it displays. So if you just see small, tiny text, give it just a moment or so.
Is this is,
Just a point here by Gregory. I may have a solution, he says, for your chat issue, Ben. If you are on desktop and using the Teams app, leave the meeting, close the app, go back to your join link, and instead of selecting open app, decline that and open on web. This solved the issue for me today. So just a little tip there, maybe of use.
Dominic, this wasn't the document I was looking for. I was looking for the propagation outline. I think it's outside the folder in the main page.
Yeah, give me just a moment. Sorry if I opened the wrong one.
And I might call on Esteban if you're still here. I know you got to pop in and out. Were you able to work on any language for the sunset clause?
Hey there, Chris. I have started up on that. Unfortunately, I probably won't have results for you until the next meeting to review with everybody, but I can also send them to you probably sometime next week.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Oh.
There we go. Sorry about that, Chris. I opened the wrong document, just similar names. So.
No worries.
And just before we continue, may I just insist that anyone who wishes to speak, please do raise your hand. While inputs in the chat are very helpful, they may not completely be reflected in the minutes. So if you wish to have, say something and your microphone does work, please, we insist that it would be very helpful to us if you do raise a hand and can speak. And if not, please do pop it in the chat. That's still useful, but it's just trying to ensure that it's reflected in the minutes. Thank you.
All right. First thing, so I think I'm still encountering a lot of contention around the authorized species, and I just want to kind of go into this quickly, or it doesn't have to be quickly, but I want to actually get a vote from people if we're going to go with Cubensis or if we're going to try to push for more broad opening of species for this. And the second thing I want to look at is this submission requirements too stringent? And I think they should probably come to the advisory board and not to the Department of Health. So first things first, can I get a show of hands for who thinks that we should limit? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Chris, before you just jump into a vote, just as a note on it, is if it is not limited just to cubensis, that second part is not necessary. So the idea behind that originally was because there had been in other public comment that we had gotten some individuals who had said we should limit it simply to cubensis, others who have said it should be open to other species. And so the idea is this is just the starting point on that for the conversation. But if we had done it with cubensis, then it would require that other species to be considered down the road. But if it is not limited to cubensis, that second part is not needed. So just to make that clear, so if people are voting that we limit to cubensis, then we would need to think about that second part. But if the vote is nothing regarding cubensis, then that is okay. Then we would not need that secondary portion.
Dominic, just to quickly jump in there, we have a question there by Shane McDaniel, and he asks, what does the bill say about species?
Yeah, I'm pulling that up now so I can just put it in.
As far as I remember, I don't remember any specificity in the bill language about specific species, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've read that. And I think we have a comment from Gregory. If you want to go ahead and chime in.
Not really. I think I'm tired. I'd love to see if we can find a way to not even mention it. If we could not regulate it until we have to. Protect our context of safety and harm reduction through analytics. And I believe the language is psilocybin producing species, something like that. I have it close by, but I don't have it up. Alternately, if the language goes in through the recommendation as cubensis, I like keeping the research capacity for broad in there, but I mean, let's do less.
Thank you for that. Dominic, I believe your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it does not state specifically. I wanted to ensure that I didn't miss something with it. And so it does not state specific. It just says found in certain mushrooms.
Fantastic. We have a hand raised by Ben Edwards. Please, Ben, your mic has been enabled. Begin when ready.
Okay, can we just leave it at psilocybe is my first question. And then I'd also like to get into the last point of why are mycelial biomass products prohibited? Mycelium is the immune system of the mushroom. And a lot of people, especially with inflammatory issues going on, can benefit from having the mycelium as well as the fruit body. So I'd like to ask why that's being limited and suggest that we just put psilocybe in there.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Ben Edwards. Ben, I have enabled your microphone. Please begin when ready. Oh, please load your hand. Okay. Well, if you put your hand up again, I can definitely allow for that. Dan Hewson, sorry. I have enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Hi there, Daniel Hewson, Rose City Laboratories, Portland, Oregon. My 2 cents on the regulating it just to psilocybin cubensis, I think is possibly a little bit of an overkill. Currently, there is a test that you can do for psilocybin cubensis. Identify psilocybin cubensis, no other species, so you can still work around it. I feel it should be opened, and you guys should just concentrate on the lab results. And then a little bit about the mycelia. We've done a little bit of testing on mycelia, and depends on the state or the time frame that the mycelia is growing, whether or not there is any psilocybin in it, and different species will produce different amounts of psilocybin in the mycelia at different amounts of time. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. So some mycelia will not have any psilocybin until maybe a week before it pins. Others may have psilocybin long before that. That just has to do with the mycelia. I did put my name or my contact in the chat and some studies we've done. Feel free to reach out. You guys should use these studies and continue to build upon them. I'm just excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next is James Brown. James, I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready.
Afternoon, everyone. Chris, thank you so much for sharing this. My thought on this, Chris and everyone, is to keep it open. I think the original intent of the bill, and this is just me speaking, was to have an open species. I think that the research, again, has been based off of regulatory reasons, has been restricted to just cubescence. I think New Mexico has an opportunity right now to make a difference in our studies, in our data, and open this up and let research and analysis drive those results. What I mean by that is, if we're just studying, like in the last committee, psilocin, then we go with that, and species to species, then that would be something to look at. And that's why I would like it to be open And that's my suggestion, is because if we're just looking at the psilocin component of it, then species to species will be different. But again, variability with individuals matters, and let's give people a choice. So I'll leave it with that, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Next, we have Gregory Evans. Gregory, I have enabled your microphone. Please begin when ready.
And I get a 1-2 for James Brown. 1-2. Exactly. If we are going medical, there's a so Pinalius should be widely researched, but we have lesser psychedelic psilocybin producing species. 3 to note are Gymnopolis, Inocybe, and Plutus. Plutus is rare. Inocybe is where we discovered origenescence. If we are looking at getting into real research for medical efficacy of minor alkaloids and what these mushrooms can do for people besides making them trip, Inocybe is definitely something that should be looked at. The other thing I just wanted to mention, the only reason this whole thing came up in Oregon around constraining species was because Oregon is an environment where psilocybe, subaerogenescens, and its ancestors thrive. Subaerogenescens is the kind of origin species that branched out over millennia and spread around the world and have things like cyanescens, alenii, stunzii, etc., etc. Those have been associated with a phenomenon called wood lovers paralysis. That is something that needs to be studied. But the reason it's an issue in Oregon is because every fall into the winter, you can go collect trash bags. And there was a risk of those ending up in the market. That's not a risk here. It's not something that we need to protect against. We can't receive mushrooms from out of state. Believe me, I've tried to grow azarescens outdoors here, and it does not work. I know one person that has, and it produces about like a half a gram. It's just not an issue. So anyways, back to the let's leave it blank preference.
Thank you very much for that. And just before I get to you, Gregory, just some comments in the chat. Shane McDaniel states, I agree. If the bill states anything, any voting or decisions we make are mute. Estevan says, beyond cultivation/facilitator liability, what risks are associated with additional species? Does opening the program up to more species delay or adversely affect the program rollout or license requirements? Eric Barker says, do not restrict species. Michelle, so many beneficial species, a shame to limit so early in the process. And those are the main points, just repeating those points essentially onwards. And those seem to be all of them. So back to you.
I would like to go back to Esteban's comment, beyond cultivator, facilitator liability, what risks are associated with additional species? And thank you, Greg, for bringing up wood lovers, paralysis, and kind of the thought process that went into Oregon approving cubensis as their primary medicine, but we don't face the same problems they do there. So I would like to open it up for anybody who can think of any other risks associated with additional species at this time, if they can bring those to the table.
We have Matthew there. Matthew, I've enabled your mic. Please begin when ready. Matthew, just to let you know, to unmute on the top right of your screen, you should see a mic. You have to click that to unmute. So I've enabled your mic, but you have to manually unmute. Right. It seems that we're having a few technical issues there with yourself, Matthew. In the meantime, as we're figuring that out, James Brown, you have your hand up. Your mic is enabled. Please begin when ready.
Chris, a couple of other species that are out there right now. One is currently being used in Arizona. There are clinical trials. And the lady out there who's amazing, she has been using, and I'm not sure if Dr. Lehman is using the same species, but that would be something to look at. Chris would ask Dr. Lehman and ask him what species he's currently using in his study. And then I believe I know the name, but I think it's called penis envy, but I just don't like saying that over the thing. But something like that might be considered safe and effective. But it is being studied, and it has shown clinical research of safety in that species.
Thank you very much for that. Matthew, just to come back to yourself, I know you have your hand up there. Let's give it another go. If you're still struggling, your mic is enabled. If it doesn't work out, jump off the call and jump back in. Alternatively, you can dial in, and to unmute on the dial in, I believe you press *9, if I'm correct, Dominic. Is that now?
So Ishmael, I believe Matthew is joining in right now on the phone.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So Matthew, I do believe that is you. To unmute, go ahead and press *6, and you should be able to speak.
Yes, hello.
There we go. We can hear you, Matthew. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just, I've been observing more than I've been talking, and I would just want to point out the dangerous of introducing other mushrooms, such as like fly aerogaris. Now, this mushroom does have tripping abilities to it, but what I'm afraid is that we're going to get this neurochemical mushroom that doesn't do the same as psychedelic mushrooms. Instead, it releases like a poisonous toxin, from what I understand. So, and then there was this huge thing for a little while. I know there was these shroomy bars that went around that had this fly aerogaris mushroom in it, and people were getting sick. And so, well, I know we all want Azures and Canyas mushrooms added. I think that right now we have to go with what's safe, what we know was in the bill. And that's why we should stick to the Cubanas, in my opinion. I yield.
Thank you very much for that. Finally, we have Dan Houston. Dan, your mic is enabled, so whenever you're ready, please begin.
Hi again from Oregon. I just wanted to touch bases. The fly garrison does not contain any psilocybin. So as long as the rules talk about psilocybin containing mushrooms, I think that it should be open and broad. And then somebody else mentioned the strain penis envy. The penis envy is actually a Cubensis strain, and it is widely used here in Oregon for the Oregon market. The growers will, in my opinion, have end up doing what they do here in Oregon, is try to end up, well, they were trying to figure out what mushroom would produce the uniform size and shape, because we do whole, but you guys are going with homogenized only. So yeah, as long as it says just psilocybin containing mushrooms, it will get rid of all the other opportunities of other poisonous mushrooms. Just my 2 cents. Sorry.
No apologies required.
Yeah, I appreciate your 2 cents for sure. And it is the PE cultivar a problem, Dominic, as far as language? Do we need to remind people to stay away from that?
I'm actually not sure if they will, considering it as an actual body part, but we will run it by. I would just request to ensure that we don't have additional delays in our being able to post the recordings, if people do just refer to it through its initials, just to be on the safe side regarding that. I think this one we're okay with. It's the other one that was a problem, JMF. So, but I think this one we're all right.
All right. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, so I think we've addressed the only concern that has come up. So now I'd like to let's take a vote. Who wants to push for a broad opening of all psilocybin containing mushrooms? Raise your hands, please.
At present, we have 15 hands raised.
Which is more than the number of attendees. So Chris, that does pass. So we will take that out. And again, as mentioned, that means that the rest of this goes. The only other question then would be with regard to the whole mushroom, as far as that aspect.
Wow, that's an amazing victory, everybody. I'm like super happy that we did that. And
just
see if
as-
we get it passed through the next two layers of that. Yes, go ahead.
Chris, I was just going to say, if people who have their hands raised, please lower your hands at this time. We'll start lowering them here in just a moment if you're not able to or not sure how. We just want to make sure we don't miss public comment because people's hands are still raised. So there we go. Okay.
And just as a, I guess more of a gesture at this point, I would like to open it up to anybody to note their opposition in the record. So if you oppose that decision, please raise your hand at this time. Let the record show that Matthew has opposed, Matthew A has opposed that decision. So thank you, Matthew. All right. I lost my
yeah, I had to take it off to put track changes on. I'm bringing it back up right now. Chris, give me just a moment.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you while you were talking. To just say, oops, technical, well, logistical item. Okay.
Next up, whole mushroom fruiting bodies. This is something I've talked about before. Could be wrong. Let's open it up to comment on for or against using the whole mushroom only, and whether we should use mycelial biomass products.
Gregory Evans, you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
I would say that there's no risk in using mycelial biomass products other than the concept of snake oil. Our good friend and mycologist, I'm spacing dude's name, uses a lot of like lion's mane biomass or like myceliated grains in commonly distributed products for like lion's mane. And that's a very common thing. I don't think that the market will push for any myceliated biomass products in the space of psychedelic use. I think it doesn't matter if you leave it in there. I don't think it really has an effect. But if it's there to protect against something, I'd love to hear what that is. I just don't. Nobody's going to do it. Unless you are. I'd love to hear your reasoning behind that.
We have a hand raised there by Adrian. Please go ahead. I've enabled your mic.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say about using mycelium biomass, it would depend on the substrate, because if you've got cultivators using manure or compost as their substrate, no one's really going to want to eat or consume the manure from that, from that biomass. Otherwise, if you're just using CVG like core, vermiculite, and gypsum, there might not be an issue in consuming that. The only issue here would be the cultivators that choose to use manure. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Gregory Evans. Gregory, your mic is enabled.
Just to put sanity on that, and I could add this to the glossary, but myceliated biomass refers to myceliated grains, Nobody takes bulk substrate and grinds that up. The way you produce myceliated a myceliated biomass product as listed by the FDA on the back of mushrooms that you buy in the store. That the terminology for that refers to grains that have been fully colonized. That's it. So wheat. My brain's not working. Somebody else. But anyways, the grains that we use to create spawn, they grind those up. They're not they're not fruiting them and then grinding it all together. Like so there is no concern about grinding up horse poo. Also, if you did grind up substrate that was horse poo, it would be very, very clean horse poo. Technically, probably good for you.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Dan Houston. Dan, your mic is enabled.
Yeah, so we've seen people take the blocks and actually do extractions with it and all of that. And I agree, it should be allowed to be used, but there definitely needs to be some guardrails put into place with what can or cannot be used as mycelia for the substrate. And the other thing is yes, it should be done with grains and stuff like that. And here in Oregon, we've had people get sick off of mushrooms that they got gluten, and that was because of a cross contamination. The mycelia fruiting body touching it and then harvesting the mushrooms. So think about, gluten and stuff like that that can be cross contaminated.
Thank you for sharing. Next, we have Ben Edwards. Ben, your mic is enabled.
So I know of a couple of anecdotal cases where people with inflammatory diseases have had outbursts from doing regular fruit bodies. And so in addition to it taking some mycelium in corn or oat or something else has helped them, because again, the mycelium, that's the immune system of the mushroom. The fruit body is super ephemeral. It comes and goes in a few days. But the mycelium is really, it can counterbalance some of the inflammatory stuff, is what I've seen. You can also do an iodine test to make sure that the substrate is adequately dissolved by the mycelium and not high in sugars. And then, yeah, you have to test it like any kind of supplement as far as cross-contamination goes. I just share those points not to try to develop a whole other protocol, but as reasons not to exclude.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, we should allow mycelial products, but there may be some issues in which products we allow, how extractions can be done, and maybe there might be further testing needed on those products. Is that an accurate reflection of what I just heard from everyone?
Gregory Evans, your hand is raised. Your mic is enabled. Please begin.
I think my take is that we don't regulate it, but as I wrote in the chat to put on the record, myceliated grains would qualify as a food product. I think that there is enough of a distinction between mushroom fruiting bodies that we've passed in our understanding of what is acceptable in this program iteratively. I think myceliated grains would be more of a food product. So I think it becomes moot at that point.
Dominic, how do you interpret that?
Thoughts?
Would that be
thoughts?
food product, and then it would be more stringent testing on all of that?
Well, we don't have food, right?
We do as a processing. If anything that's processed into further than just homogenized ground mushroom is going to need to be going to have to go through food processing rules.
Right, and that actually creates an entire other level of regulatory aspects that are not even with the DOH. And so that was a part of the idea behind some of the comments originally with excluding the biomass. The issue as far as testing is, remember, every test that gets added means that there is more of a cost on it. And so the question that I would have is, because several people here in this conversation have said, well, we would have to add these additional tests. So which would be better from a balancing standpoint of adding in the additional tests versus excluding the mycelial biomass? And that would be one of the questions that I would have. And again, remember, this is part of the conversation. And at least as far as the department is concerned, what we're really doing is we want to hear what's happening with the conversation, the recommendations being made, the reasons behind it, so that this committee and then the board can make those final recommendations. So those are all things to think about. And cost is, and has been brought up by many of the individuals on this call and on quite a few of the others, as being a very important aspect of it. And I would agree with that. And so is this something, and maybe Dan Hewson could speak to the cost of doing some of those additional tests that would be needed. Is that something that we would want to do in the initial stages of the program? And remember, if we find that we need to pivot with the program, regulations are not set in stone. We do change them, and we do anticipate within the first year to 2 years having and needing to change them and modify them as the program develops. And we discover some things that work, some things that don't. And no matter how careful we are, we're going to miss some things. So just always remember that aspect as well.
Thank you for that, Dominic. We have a hand raised by Shane McDaniel. Shane, your mic is enabled. Please begin when ready.
Yeah, I may have missed something here. I heard Dan say something earlier about New Mexico's not allowing fruiting bodies to be used. Did I misunderstood that? And he said something about only homogenized product.
Yeah, so Shane, we have been talking about the fact that from a testing standpoint, because it is a medical program, that the products are going to have to be homogenized in order to ensure consistency going across the board and to ensure that the testing can occur. Otherwise, all of the different, what is ended up grown will end up needing to be tested. Now, again, that doesn't mean down the road that there won't be other methodologies, but in the initial stages, it will need to be homogenized.
All right.
Well, that was definitely a conversation killer. Sorry, everyone.
We have a hand raised there by Gregory Evans. Gregory, your mic is enabled.
You can always depend on me for conversation. Yeah, I'm with it. Like, I think your perspective there, like, flips my perspective to just leave it in there, and then it becomes a non-issue down the road, and it doesn't make that other aspect more complicated. I think I would vote leave it in at this point based on that.
All right. I think we'll take this to a vote now. Who all in favor of leaving this as whole mushroom fruiting bodies only? Raise your hands, please.
At present, we have 8 hands raised.
Okay, please lower your hands. And after I see them all down, we'll go ahead and allow people to vote against. All opposed to limiting this to whole mushroom fruiting bodies, please raise your hands.
Present, we have 4 hands raised.
All right, with that said, we'll go ahead and amend this document to show that we voted 8-4 for whole mushroom fruiting bodies to be used for this program. All right, so the next part here, let's go into, so I just had a couple concerns on this part, like as I was kind of going back through this document. Some of these seemed excessive, right? So we have cultivation and harvest. Obviously, if you're going to cultivate, you're going to harvest. Packaging is going to happen both after cultivation and harvest and after processing, I assume. So I think we should remove those two and just permit cultivation and processing. Is there any comments around this?
Matthew, your hand is raised and your mic is enabled. Please begin. Seems their hand was lowered. So Dominic. Oh, actually, no, we have another hand raised there. By a phone number, I believe it might be someone. Do you want to go ahead?
That the phone number should be Matthew. Let him go ahead first.
Absolutely. To unmute, it is *6, I believe.
Yes.
Hello.
There we go, Matthew.
Hello.
We can hear you now.
I'm sorry for all these technical difficulties. So just to go back on the permits real quick, I had some time to review this, and I was thinking, for the mycologist that is a hobby mycologist and for the different types of ways for all people to have access, I was thinking about how about different, so like a micro tier, maybe a community tier and like a commercialized tier. So that way we can have paths and avenues for the home mycologist to enter. What do you think about that, Chris? We're a micro business even.
So
I'm sorry,
Chris,
Yeah,
I actually can answer that if that's okay. So Matthew, the issue is that it has to be within the medical program. And so we're not limiting how much individual organizations would need to grow or individuals to grow, but it would have to be a part of the medical program. It could not be separate as a, just an individual who wants to grow and consume. It has to be a part of the program. So someone would have to apply for a permit to be a part of this program.
Yeah. Just like looking at the equitable access that the New Mexico Cannabis program had was the ultimate license was kind of what killed it. At first, it was designed to make it so there was no monopolies and everybody could have access to it, but capital and real estate compliances, it resulted in a harder way. So for me, I'm worried about this happening again. Big companies are going to come in, they're going to push out all the little guys. So I was that doesn't mean that their medicines are any better because they're mass produced. And dare I say, the stewardship of the small batches makes them more valuable. So even if we were in the scope of the medical program itself, how would we go about including some of these guys that are on this call now who is self-taught mycologist who could help us spread psilocybin and make people better. How do we add them? And that's why I was thinking of this tier system.
Sure. And I completely understand that, Matthew. I can tell you what really happens with regard to when you separate it out into the micro business sort of realm is a lot of that had to do with fee structure. There actually are no fees with regard to this particular program as far as the Department of Health aspect of it. There may be other fees for other, permits, inspections, for example, from, for your certificates of occupancy, that sort of thing. But the program itself is not going to have those. And that's a part of where that access sort of comes in. And what has actually happened continually with regard to cannabis as the micro businesses were created is they continue to ask, can we get more plants? Can our limit be increased? And so it actually creates sort of a false, in many ways, a false dichotomy between the larger businesses and the smaller ones. And so completely understanding the access, that is a part of where some of the potentials with regard to equity and access we'll need to address. But by actually limiting or by trying to create a separate classification actually creates additional problems and inhibits that, because anybody who is involved in this program as far as for cultivation has to be permitted and licensed, and that process is not really going to be any different in able to do that because it's still going to have the same safety issues, the same testing issues, all of those sort of things. It's not something that can be sold to somebody out of a dispensary type situation. It has to be administered within the therapeutic approved locations. And so that is one of the big issues with regard to that. So understanding that, yes, we need to ensure that there's that access, but trying to separate out a licensure. I mean, there's not very much that we'd be able to do of saying, well, we'll reduce fees. Well, half of zero fee is still zero. So, and that was one of the big issues with regard to cannabis is the fees per plant were very large. And that was part of the problem and why micro businesses were proposed originally. But unfortunately, as we've already seen with that, they've requested increases. And it's exactly for the reasons you are stating that without those increases, they cannot continue to compete with those other larger operations. And so they need to be able to change that in order to be able to still be successful and survive.
Thank you very much for that. Gregory Evans, your hand is raised.
What?
Go ahead.
Just a moment, though, that I was just responding to that question. The main reason I had actually put my hand up initially was one of the questions that we had, and why harvest is actually on here is because under current law, you can actually grow psilocybin legally in New Mexico, but you cannot harvest and use it. And so the question on why it was there is, will we want to have that there as a potential safety mechanism for the producers? Now, remember, there's not a fee for this. So what we envision from a standpoint of the application is that those individuals who are doing this will simply check off on what different areas that they want the permitting for. And so then they would be able to have that. It would be one process. So it's not like they would actually have to submit separate applications for each. They would simply just apply and click a box in the application to be able to say, yes, we want to do this. And so the idea behind having that harvest was to help provide a little extra protection, potentially. It may not be necessary, but that was part of the idea behind it. And then the idea on the packaging is because we do envision down the road where it may also be a situation as the program grows and as we're not just having small amounts of psilocybin produced, but larger amounts, that it may be something that the packaging may be outsourced. And so there may be a different organization that is actually doing the packaging. For example, if it's being put into pill form, something like that, where that equipment may be very expensive for an individual operator to purchase, but a manufacturer who's doing packaging may be able to do that and do that across other organizations that are doing cultivation and thereby help reduce the cost. So again, that was part of the idea behind inclusion of that. Again, as we've said before, this is not the end all be all at this point, and even the first set of rules will not be. So that could be something that we consider down the road if it is removed, or it could be left in. And again, the individuals and the organizations that are applying for the cultivation simply check all of the boxes for those things they want to do. But that was the idea behind this, looking to the future, quite frankly, on that. So that's just those ideas. And I'm going to be quiet now because really we do want to hear what people have to say regarding it.
Thank you for that, Dominic. Gregory Evans, your mic is enabled, please.
Dominic, I think we all benefit every time you speak. So, I mean, I don't know if you need a little pat on the back, but you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why I'm here. To address Matthew's question, I think I really understand where you're coming from, but I think zeroing in on the ninja level context that we're like driving into, where this is going to be a very sharp blade of an action. We are going to create a very specific opening of the ability to like normalize this through this medical context. And so like the regulations around a facility, you know, which we're coming to, Chris, like those will define who can and can't, because like I can't afford rent to this place where I am going to produce like medical grade psilocybin mushrooms. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. I will continue as a law-abiding citizen to culture mycelium in my home, grow it on substrate, and not harvest it. I will continue to do that. Within, it's not exactly like the confines of the laws, but it's inside like the what do they call it? There's my words aren't working today, everybody. Precedent, thank you. So as far as like individuals being stewards of this medicine, I don't think that that's necessarily going to change. And I'm not recommending that anything happen that's outside of the explicit confines of the law moving forward. But what we need to do is be really careful how we talk about this stuff and how we move forward in support of the medical system, because that medical system is going to open a door to normalization that as we're patient and as we support this entire organism, we will see growth happen that allows for different levels and different types. Like down the line, I'm the kind of person that would produce a boutique, unique species that nobody else grows, that's like, you know, some thing that nobody's ever heard of, that has very unique qualities. And I'm going to make enough for 5 people and not for a mass market. But we also have to consider, as we move into this first iteration of the industry, there is not going to be a lot of production. There's not going to be a lot of sales. Colorado still hasn't really sold more than like a pound. Like like somebody has the metrics on that somewhere, but like there have not been sales. Like people are producing pounds and destroying them because they can't have more than X amount in their facilities. So, as we start up, I think slow, I don't see more room. Like I think 1 or 2 producers is going to be sitting on excess product in the first year. And that's just a fact. Like we're going to have enough for the people, but then also like the idea that we're not constrained to only holding one license. I think that there will be partnership sort of things that pop up in the market, and this is speculation, where a small scale producer and a facilitator partner with their licenses and do a little vertical integration. We don't know how this stuff is going to manifest, but as we write the language, we can kind of sculpt like what we think is going to be safe and best for patients and best for the perspective of how this program is perceived, not nationally, but like internationally. Like this is literally going to change the world.
Thank you for that. Next, Dan Houston. Dan, your mic is enabled, so please do go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so on the different licenses, the cultivator, harvest, processing, packaging, I agree, harvest should be gone, packaging should be gone. And under processing, that needs to have two different options for endorsements. And it shouldn't cost any more to have one or both, but you should have a edible manufacturing under the processing, and then concentrate under the processing is what I see the processing license is. So under the processing, you can either process it into concentrates or process it into edibles, and the edibles require more of the FDA, whatever's, kitchen and all of that versus processing you into concentrates. And then the keypad entry, that's a little excessive. I think it should just say something about a commercial grade lock or equivalent, and people should be allowed to use keypads if they want, or just normal everyday locks. I use keypads everywhere because fingerprint everywhere because people don't lose their key, and it's really easy to disable somebody's fingerprint, but that's just me. I put up in the chat some numbers. One grower can grow for the entire state of New Mexico without a problem. What we got going on here in Oregon currently here in Oregon, we have growers that grow a little bit and then suspend their license for a while. And then they reactivate their license and grow a little bit more and suspend their license in order to extend the amount of time they have their license for, and to and they all understand that there's too many manufacturers here in Oregon and nobody is moving the product that they thought. So having altered tiers or whatever, it doesn't, I mean, one grower can grow for all Mexico, New Mexico. So do you need multiple tiers? I would say no. I put in the chat though some volumes that have been moved here in Oregon, and you see we have a decrease. We probably have a decrease because of Colorado coming on board, but also there are illegal edibles out there on the market. Somebody mentioned the chocolate bars. And head shops are good because everybody's coming on board, but they're not. It has prescription medication and all kinds of stuff that we found in it. We have a paper published in the Journal of American Medical Association. I posted that. But take a look at some of these numbers, guys. It's not going to be a big program. Keep it simple.
And thank you for that, Dan, and the numbers especially. And just as a note, again, as we kind of said before, is it's going to be a homogenized product. So there's not going to be concentrates or edibles in the initial stages of the program. That is something that can be determined and potentially added down the road. And some of it has to do with some of the additional licensure and the other organizations or the other agencies that would need to be involved. But again, initially, the initial aspects is going to be the homogenized product.
Oh, so what is the processing for then? What's that license for?
That again is because we do have to set it separately, and in the event that we do have different cultivators who join together. So for example, as Matthew was saying, you may have some small cultivators who are joining together, may not have the equipment for doing that processing and the packaging and all of that. And so then they could potentially do that through another licensee. And that's the idea for having those as separate. And again, it's not a whole separate application. It's just simply those who are interested in doing those aspects, complete those portions, click on it. We're going to make sure that that's as simple as possible. I hope that helps.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I took processing because we have processing out here. People make edibles and they make concentrates. Nobody's really doing the consuming the concentrates, but they put the concentrates into the edibles. I really believe that you guys need to allow edibles 100%. I'm sorry. I'm probably a little late to the game on that one, but you need edibles.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. We have Esteban hand up. Your mic is enabled. Please begin when ready.
Hey, I'll keep this very brief. I just wanted to offer some insight on state of New Mexico v. Pratt, which is often the precedent people are citing when it comes to growing psilocybin in New Mexico. I actually have done a lot of research on this because I was famously interviewed in a gotcha-style journalism by the quote-unquote journalist at KOB TV, claiming that I said growing mushrooms are legal in New Mexico. So the real outcome of that particular Supreme Court case was that by Pratt producing psilocybin mushrooms in a home environment, he was not guilty of trafficking by manufacturing. That being said, he still could have been legally charged with possession or possession with intent to distribute. So an important thing to keep in mind, it is not currently legal to grow mushrooms in New Mexico. It is just not considered trafficking by manufacturing.
Thank you for that. Next, we have James Brown. James, your mic is enabled.
Hey, Chris and everyone. I wanted to echo Dan's stuff on simplicity. And you guys keep saying it. I just think that some of these, as we clean this up a little bit, like the keypad entry, I don't think it's needed. And like Dan said, with some of the other ones, I think we could skirt those off or combine them into two. And then I wanted to also bring up that other comment I put it in the chat about live agar and live cultures and agar. Is there anything that we need to do with that? Is that part of the biomass, or is that something that falls? Do we need to talk about that at all?
I think we'll get to that that part of it. Did you have something, Dominic?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as we've kind of talked about before, is, as we go through these and realize we've put these in here a lot because it's been feedback, conversation, other items. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a stance of the department, for example, to have that. Obviously, as we're going through, I'm letting everyone know, here's what we think we need to do as far as for getting the program started initially. Doesn't mean that things won't get added in, and sort of some of the ideas. So please do not worry about, you're not going to hurt feelings or any of that. But as far as for doing that with regard to the liquid and the agar, I don't actually think we need to, because that is getting into the nitty gritty of telling the cultivators, this is how you grow, how you don't grow, what you can't use. So I don't think that we need to, as we've kind of said with some of the other items, like, for example, which species to use. And so I think if we're keeping that in mind as we go through these, taking some of those things out or not even adding them in is actually kind of the way to go, if that makes sense. But it's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. I hope that helps.
Fantastic. We have a hand up by Gregory Evans. Gregory, your mic is enabled.
I had something to say. I think we're good, though. I think you said everything, Dominic.
Excellent. All right. So, I'm satisfied with Dominic's experience rolling out the marijuana program to keep the harvesting and packaging in the permitting process, especially since there isn't going to be a charge and it'll be essentially a click box saying, I want a permit for X, Y, Z. And, but if anybody wants to challenge that and push for a vote, I'm about the democratic process. So if you would like a vote on that portion of it, please raise your hand. Okay, we'll go ahead and keep that part in. And then I did hear a great recommendation from Dan about adding commercial grade locks to the keypad entry, or to the next portion here.
And just so everybody knows, and Chris and everybody that's here, is these are just some examples. It basically, as a part of the rules, it would be that the organizations would have to basically just provide us a plan. It's not necessarily that, because different locations are going to have different needs and from a security standpoint. So we don't want to get into, again, the nitty gritty. So these are really just, for example, and maybe the way we should do it is it should be IE, double locks, security systems, surveillance, commercial grade locks, that sort of thing. And again, that dependent upon the location is going to depend exactly how secure and what additional security features they may need.
Okay, so is that going to be part of like an inspection saying your security is good enough for this location given?
Yeah, they would have to basically present a plan. So that's the demonstrate that the products are kept secure. And so how they would do that is just basically what they would need to do. And so we just have, these are here as some examples of ways that things can be secured.
Okay. Okay.
Is that? And by the way, it doesn't include, because we did have a discussion about it, but because it is Friday afternoon, I'm going to tell everybody, we did talk about the fact that every cultivator should have sharks with lasers strapped to their heads for security purposes. So.
Greg, do you have another comment?
Yeah, I think just the real world scenario, just for perspective, it's like you go to this website, you say, I want a thing. A compliance officer responds to that and says, hey, show me your plan. There's a form that will be created way down the line by, well, maybe in less than 6 months. somewhere here, there will be a form created that just says, here, fill this out. And then the compliance body from the regulating department then comes, looks at the thing and says, cool, you are in compliance. Please proceed. Signs a piece of paper and then maybe has some cadence of checks. And I think what Dominic was saying here is like the bullet point is what's important. The specifics are less, but I think the more the less granular those are, like the categories of types of ways that we can make things safe. Sharks, was that lasers?
Yes, with lasers strapped to their heads. For those who don't get the reference, you know, it's a movie.
Yeah, no,
reference.
I get it. My biggest concern is Ghidorah. But yeah, let's try to get through this. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm grabbing that, or I'm picking that part up now. And I think what we got there is good enough. So the next thing I saw, and I'm kind of dropping down to the notes that I noticed. So if other people have reviewed this document and have noticed something that they think we should challenge or change or vote on, I'd appreciate you speaking up or raising a hand, and that way we can make this as best as we can. I saved this bullet point here for a sunset clause, which I believe we're going to have somebody introduce language for next session, hopefully.
Yes, and Chris, just to note, I realized that we had it on our other checklist, but I didn't include it on here, so I just added it, and it's the registration with New Mexico Tax and Revenue.
And are there any other questions about section B here?
And just really quick, oh, I'm sorry, I did not put, I think I may have missed putting the last section into the chat as I was doing with the first few. My apologies if I did so, but I'm going to put this one here so people have it.
And a lot of this doesn't look like it's going to be very negotiable, right? Like this is just how you have to kind of operate if you're a business within New Mexico.
Right.
Esteban.
And before we go to Esteban, Zach, I just want to just note is you do have the question about the entire facility should not require. You are correct. If you notice the language there says it's demonstrate that the mushrooms and products are kept in secure location. So if you have an office or something like that, it doesn't necessarily need that same level. Although I think most of the time it will, because they're usually contained in a building. But again, there could be differences there. But thank you for that. That's an important point. Okay, and sorry, Esteban.
Yeah, thank you, Dominic. Yeah, I just have a question regarding the authorization from landlords or building owners. I see that that's listed as a requirement to get the license, and I'm wondering if that's sort of a chicken and egg scenario. I feel like a lot of commercial real estate owners, if you were to present them with the idea of, hey, I'd like paperwork documenting that I can grow what is a federally regulated and illegal substance here for the state, oftentimes they're going to ask, well, let's see proof from the state that you're even qualified to do this. Do you face any similar issues with the cannabis program?
We did actually experience that. And in fact, some of what happened in the early parts of the program, and it has happened at least a couple of times I'm aware of since, is where people would submit their application and then they were not able to move forward because when the landlord found out what was going on and what they were going to do, they pulled their contract. So people had invested a lot of money into doing and setting up for their license, and then ended up actually on the back end of it, so to speak, where they weren't even able to start up. And so that's actually a part of it, and why that proof is really required in the beginning, because we don't want to set people up for failure. Yes, it does create on the other side exactly what you're saying, but in many ways it's better to find that out in advance than to suddenly invest a lot of money into something and then suddenly have the rug pulled out from under you.
That makes sense. So could applicants reach out for, say, whatever the equivalent of a letter recommendation would be from the state,
Yes.
essentially saying, yes, this person is applying for the program under legal purview?
Yes, and we actually used to do that with cannabis as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
I don't know if they're doing that currently, but we did used to.
Thanks.
Is that something we need to add language in here for, Dominic, or is that something that's going to be taken care of in the wash?
That doesn't need to be in regulation. That's just something that the program does, so it doesn't have to be regulated.
Okay, excellent.
Because essentially what it is it says what the letter essentially is it's just saying that that individual or that organization is going through the process for an application.
Excellent.
Gregory, your hand is raised. Your mic is enabled.
If this isn't the right place, just let me know. I had this whole brainworm about speed to market, and had this whole thing that I haven't sent in because it's not quite finished writing, but like the idea that like, is it going to behoove us to license existing agriculture farms to like, so to leverage existing infrastructure in the market in an effort to help us move forward more quickly? Like Esteban, you have a farm or whatever. It's like, do you get that? Like, is there a risk in having that dual licensure with your food and whatever? And I like adding that like confirmation for the licensure with the landowner or whatever. Like, and maybe this is like a conversation for a different spot or a different day, but like just trying to think of that, like how we can leverage to meet the needs of the accelerated deadlines. It's more of just a question.
Thank you for that. We have Shane McDaniel as well, who wishes to make a comment. Your mic is enabled, Shane.
Yeah, just a question. Are we going to expedite cultivators and testing ahead of some of the other practitioners so that we can have product to set up and establish testing procedures so that that isn't, all done at the same time, and then the people that are going to be providing medicine to the end user, to the patients, don't have to wait 3 months after everything else gets started up to start getting product. Or so basically, are we going to put some sort of limited number of cultivators to come up with the first round of product.
Yeah, so Shane, that's actually why we have prioritized these particular regulations for the cultivation and testing, so that we can get that. We heard very clearly from many of the folks from both Colorado and from Oregon that we really needed to have product before we even have patients, because we also need it with regard to some of the training potentially, and in some other areas as well for testing, or not other areas, but also for testing to ensure potency and things like that. And since it takes time to grow, that's why we're prioritizing this. Our hope is that we have these regulations, or our plan, it's not a hope, it's our plan, is that we have these regulations complete and ready, and that we'll be able to do the applications this summer, so that the cultivators and the testing can actually occur before all of the trainings are occurring, and before everybody is starting as a patient in December of 26. So yes, that is a part of it. As we kind of mentioned during the board meeting, I believe it was, it may have been one of the other committees. My apologies. We've had so many meetings, they've run together a little bit. But what we had talked about essentially is the priority, or the process is going to be the cultivating and testing, then the licensure, so meaning the education and the training needed for the various levels of practitioners. And then at that point, the final bit will be the licensing for the actual locations. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not working on those processes. That's just the priority. And in fact, to help us with regard to, because we have such a small staff, in order to make sure that we're doing the cultivating, we've actually been asking the other committees to hold off on meeting till after the legislative session, and simply so that we can focus on this aspect. And it's a part of why this committee, as we mentioned last time, is actually meeting so often right now, so that we can actually get through these processes and create the regulations for them. So I hope that helps with regard to that. But yes, we are actually doing that as fast as we can.
Thank you.
Excellent. I was just looking in the chat about some of this stuff. I think we considered MGAP as being a recommendation before, and we kind of denied the need to make that into regulation. We're going to let the market sort that out, and then, as Dominic said, we're working as fast as we can to get the licensing up, and then people can apply for licensing, and the credentials will shake out in this regulation that we're setting up right now. So, okay. Which brings me to the next part, which is zoning and municipal permits. You're not going to be able to grow medicinal psilocybin mushrooms in your closet for this program. Matthew, do you have a comment? Matthew, you may have to unmute from your phone. We can't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. So for those of us that live in rural areas and have exterior buildings and such, what I'm worried about is not about zoning. So agriculture zoning, commercial zoning, it's all different in rural areas, and not just about that. I'm worried about my local government even participating in the program at all, because there's a lot of stereotypes that go with magic mushrooms, especially you get out here on the east of New Mexico, closest to Texas, all very biblical. Even if we're trying to teach them, it's for hospice care and for addictions and the plethora of stuff that it can do. So this is a big concern for me. The zoning in general and how it's set up, and I understand that we don't want people growing shoot boxes of mushrooms in their closet, but I also am worried about local government getting it, not allowing it to get going before it can, based on zoning issues. They can basically manipulate this verbiage to make it say whatever it wants to. So if it could be a little bit more open-ended, I would appreciate that.
Dominic, do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, so thank you, Matthew, and completely understand that. You know, there have been some issues with regard to that regarding cannabis. The statute does not actually allow us to override the local zoning, and that's why we actually do have the note here about local governments. So that is something that currently is there, and unfortunately, that's not something that we can overrule as an executive agency through our rulemaking. So we do have to go forward with that. But we want to make sure that people know that that is something that they need to look at as far before they decide to start on this kind of an endeavor. And that's why we have that specifically as a note. So, but completely understand what you're saying on that. And then just while I'm just talking, Zach, the food safety training does not actually require a food permit or food permit from the state or local government. It's just one of those where there are several standardized trainings here in New Mexico. And so that makes it a little easier to ensure that people are getting the training without actually having to turn around and write up their own educational requirement for that. And that's part of why we included that on in there. And sorry, for those who aren't reading the chat, Zach just had a question about removing the food safety training if it requires a food permit from state or local government. And just the answer is it doesn't require that.
Okay, if there's no further comment on C or D, we're in section, what, 3 right now? Would anybody like to push a vote for section 3 to kind of be accepted?
Chris, I would actually ask from the department standpoint that we leave it as it is right now until the next meeting, because I think there's still some conversations to be had. Some people still have some thoughts, and I don't want to squelch that because this is so important. And for example, we still have the sunset clause to determine and a few other things, especially, for example, here in section D. So I would say, let's let people, you know, consider it, think about it a little bit more. Since our next meeting is next Wednesday, that it's not a lot of time, but it gives some time for people to consider and think about it. Because the other part is there are things that we may not have thought about right now as we're reading through it. And we'd like to make sure that people do consider it. You never know. People come up with ideas that nobody else has thought about it. And that we can then turn around and suddenly that light bulb moment happens, and we want to be able to allow that as much as possible. So I would just say to hold off on voting on it at the moment until then, if that helps.
Yes, thank you, Dominic. And feel free, I want to extend that invitation to anybody else. If somebody feels like we're moving too fast on something and they need time to consider it, please let me know. And, you know, we do have a deadline coming up, but also we don't have to get everything figured out for that. So we can always come back to something if we need more time on it. So please speak up if you feel like we're moving too fast on something. I appreciate it.
And there is a question from James about, is quantity and inventory part of this document? James, could you expand on that a little bit? Do you mean, are we putting inventory limits on it? If so, no, we are not. So if that's it, but if you mean something else, could you explain it a little bit more? That was it. Okay. Yeah, we're not putting an upper limit on that. Thank you. We're just not sure how much the sharks with the laser strapped to their head can actually protect. So sorry, everybody. It is the Friday afternoon at the end of a very busy and good but long week. So my apologies if my humor is not appreciated. I get it, but I have to make myself laugh a little bit here and there. So,
I think Matthew, did you have another comment?
Yes, sir. So just to touch on that sunset idea you had, Chris, what if you made it so New Mexico residents only? So if you owned any of these businesses, maybe you could put in the law that you have to be a New Mexico resident, or you have to pay a income tax return in New Mexico. Just something softballing there.
I think that is the general intent there, and I believe Esteban is going to be working on that for us. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let's continue down to another one here. Let's go into growth mediums. So right now under current regulate, or our framework that we're working on here, we're not restricting any substrates. Okay, so but they all have to be documented, tracked by batch, fully disclosed on final product labeling. Does anybody have any issue with that or have any comment?
And just as a little bit of explanation, and a very small bit, is the reason for the fully disclosed is, as some of the information we've gotten, for example, Dan has provided from Oregon, where people have had reactions, that sort of thing. This way people know that they can, what the products are or potential contaminations with regard to, for example, grain or corn or anything like that.
Esteban, can you unmute and go ahead?
Yeah, I just had a couple questions here. So tracking by batch, what are we defining as batch on there? Is this a single brick of cocoa coir, or is this an order of 10 pallets?
Yeah, we're gonna get there. That may be another one we come back to. I threw Colorado's definition of batch in here. We'll talk about that and see if that works for us. But if people are more than welcome to bring different language on batch, and we can debate that. But I would like to.
My mistake. I thought by batch on there it was referring to batch of substrate. I see what you mean.
Yeah, so I think part of the definition of a batch of mushrooms is going to be that it all has to be grown on one same substrate, and that way it can be documented throughout the process what this batch of mushrooms was grown on, the potency of it, and all the other testing labeling we're going to do. Does that?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that definitely answers that section of it. My other question was fully disclosing substrate on there. Is this a simple list of ingredients on there? Is this abiding by the USDA's allergen listing? Essentially, are we listing this was produced in a facility that also processes corn, or are we having to literally say, corn grain spawn was used, there's 6 ingredients in our substrate, so on and so forth?
Yeah. Esteban, the idea behind it is to actually have what is used in that particular substrate.
Okay, thank you.
And again, the main reason is just so that individuals who have particular allergies or other other potential concerns about contaminants can actually be able to know what is in the product that they are consuming. And you will notice we don't have specific language. We just want to ensure it's fully disclosed.
Gregor, do you want to go ahead and go next?
I think we could add maybe a caveat on the product labeling. So like we're moving into a world where like the idea of labeling is a little bit closer to something that we can research more deeply. So like having language that says, or a QR code, click this and see the full description of this thing, but like access to that information, maybe we could rephrase that as like the end user has full access to the information for this purpose, and maybe call out specific warnings, because it's like it's going to get so confusing when people start putting erythritol and like different types of like azomite or vermiculite, and people are going to start wondering what vermiculite is, and it's good. It could get messy on the label. Maybe
Yeah,
that's my concern.
Greg, we're not to what the label itself will actually look like yet. And we have done in the past in other instances where it is that here's what has to be on the printed label. Here's the other information that's available. So yeah, we're just not to that point yet. So don't worry about that.
Love it.
Is what I would say. It's a good point. We always want a label to be readable for individuals who are looking at it. And so it may be more something like the final version be a fact sheet. For example, like what you get when you go to a pharmacy and pick up your pharmaceuticals. The label has 3 or 4 items, and then your fact sheet has 1,000 items listed. So
I don't know if you've ever bought marijuana gummies, but those are real hard to read.
Right. So we will be getting to that, but so don't worry about that as far as the final aspects of labeling, as far as how that will look. We will make sure that it's accessible and yet not illegible. Yeah. 3-point font, right? So
on batch, I'm pasting in like a draft of what I was thinking, but when you're talking and pause me immediately if it's not the right time.
Yeah, I think batch is in the next set of
got it. Waiting.
This.
Muting.
Okay, I think Zach, you're up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to the question about substrates and labeling, just to make sure that there wasn't going to be any requirements for tracking chain of custody from, cradle to grave. It's tracking and labeling the ingredients or those substrates within the actual facility.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. I was actually going to ask you what exactly you were meaning by that. I was a little confused, but now that you said that, I get what you mean. Yes, it's just going to be what is in that substrate, what's in that growth medium, not necessarily that it came from, Zach's farm, at Highway 56 and then was transferred to Chris, and it is just going to be what are the primary ingredients, that or composition rather of that growth medium and substrate.
All right, if there's no more comment on growth medium, I think everybody's kind of in agreement. We keep it as open and broad as possible. And so I don't see any need for changes there. Stop me if I'm wrong, but let's go on to environmental controls. I know we kind of talked about a lot of this in a last meeting, but we'll go ahead and hit it one more time. I don't know, is this second bullet even necessary? Like we just viewed went and visited a mushroom farm recently, and obviously there's a lot of intention that goes into keeping mushrooms from getting contaminated. But I'm not sure that this is something that needs to be put in regulation. And if I'm wrong, please let me know. Great.
I mean, I'm kind of on the fence with you. It's like, it's going to be market regulated. Like mushroom farms are the cleanest things in the universe. Like it's so important to be clean just to not ruin everything. Zach's comment about cross-contamination. My only concern about cross-contamination would be spore drift is like really the only concern. If you have multiple cultivars and then you accidentally like have one growing where it's not supposed to be, or if you're in a mixed use facility that has growing lion's mane, Pinot, and then in another room you have cubensis and your cubensis spores out and the vents push spores into another room, like that kind of thing. As far as the biosecurity measures, I don't think it hurts to leave it in, but I mean, it's going to be on the it's going to be somewhere in the compliance forms anyways. Somebody's going to be like, are you doing your thing? Yeah, I'm doing my thing. That's how compliance sounds. I'm an expert.
All right.
I don't know. Thoughts?
So Chris, I'm seeing in the comments, it's people saying, no, don't really need the biosecurity. So is there any objection if we take it off? No? Okay, so there we go. Easy. Okay, and Chris, I would just recommend, because we're now at just about 4:45. I would recommend at this point, I think we've gone through a lot, and I think the definition in the conversation about batch is going to be a little bit of a long one, and conversation on that. So I would recommend perhaps waiting until the meeting on Wednesday and continuing at that point.
Sure. Can you just maybe scroll down and drop it in the chat so people can copy it if they want to? And I think they can't have access to this document, right, Dominic?
Yeah, actually, we sent it out in the meeting invite. So for everybody who has the meeting invite, if you had signed up for the meeting in advance, we sent you out an email separately that actually has the document. If you signed up after we had sent that email out, it is actually in the invite for the meeting itself. So you should see it there. But I'm also going to put it here in the chat in just a moment.
So I would really appreciate if people kind of read ahead for next one and bring their comments and concerns to the next meeting. And if you have alternate language, having it prepared would be excellent. Or if you just have recommended changes, like I said, this was Colorado's definition of a batch, and so that's kind of a good place to start, I think. So
just a quick question, if I may, Chris. Zach, you're saying, can we add fungicides and pesticides? Add that where? Can we unmute Zach? Okay, Zach, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I was in the section above batches where it mentioned pesticides. I was just going to suggest that we add fungicides to that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually was brought up in the last meeting, and it was actually split. So I'd actually like to hear from some of the cultivators. What do you think? Should it be no pesticides and no fungicides utilized? Is that reasonable, or is there a reason for that? Shane, it actually was going back and forth. Nobody?
I think Greg has his hand up. Do you want to speak to something here, Greg?
I mean, I like that conversation. I think I'd like to leave for another day. I had a kind of separate question when it's time.
Okay. Yeah, see, and this was a part of it, is we had it back and forth last week where it's remove it or leave it. If it's a question of would people be utilizing it anyway, is it something we have to test for if it's not there in this itself? But Esteban, you've got your hand up, and as a cultivator, can you go ahead, speak on this?
Yeah, so in regard to fungicides, that's mostly a non-starter, as fungicides would actively kill the product that you're growing on there, with some minor exceptions, things like hydrogen peroxide. I think a better bet than flat out saying no fungicides, no pesticides is perhaps we could, as a group, or maybe even a few folks offline, come up with a list of what we could see as potentially harmful substances that people may attempt to use, and just issue a banned substance list, things like glyphosates or whatever you may consider.
Sure. Okay, so for the moment, we'll leave that as is. and people think about what is possible to be used. How about this? Other, I hate to use the word chemicals, but I guess that's the only thing coming to my brain in a moment. If anyone has something different, I'd appreciate it. But other chemicals determined harmful by the department. That way, if there are changes to the to that list as the board reviews it and things like that, that could be adjusted. Would that be work okay? Oh, and I'm sorry, for some reason my screen stopped sharing. I didn't realize that. I may have, my apologies. There we go. So what I did is, hopefully you all can see it again. I just added here at the end, the other chemicals is determined harmful by the department. But Esteban, go ahead, because you mentioned that. So as far as a list, go right ahead.
Oh, my apologies. I still had my hand up.
Oh,
go ahead, Esteban.
Oh, I was just going to say, I still had my hand up previously. Please, by all means, Greg, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I'm still waiting to talk about something else. If you have something about this, please go ahead.
There's a comment from Zach asking if we could stick to a banned substance list, and I kind of agree. Is there a reason you chose that language specifically, Dominic?
I was just saying chemicals because it was what was coming to my brain and I couldn't get it out. So I'm fine with it would actually be substances. So other substances determined harmful by the department.
I did throw in some language that might trigger another thought. I said anything that can leave residual traces in the product downstream or something like that. Like, as opposed to a chemical, because like, I mean, I use isopropyl alcohol and that's a very harsh chemical, but it doesn't end up in product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think substance would probably be a little better in this case. It's a little broader, and again, it would be determined to be harmful, and that determined to be harmful could include residual traces.
There you go. No cocaine for your mushrooms.
Okay, so we're getting short on time, Greg. I think you wanted to make a comment about something else. Let's keep it brief. We only have a few minutes and we have a couple more people that want to talk.
I just wanted to see if there's a way that we could distribute, or if that glossary that I submitted was in review or if it could be made available, because in that there's a lot of like spec language for definitions that are very much centered around like this specific committee, and I would love people tearing that apart and reworking it and finding ideas in it and all of that. Does that something that we can do?
Yeah, it's actually under review right now, Greg. We've submitted it for review and it does take a little bit of time for that to occur. It's a part of why we have those deadlines, but it can take 5 to 10 business days. So since I think we just got that on Tuesday, was it Monday or Tuesday? Please give it a little bit of time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Would it be inappropriate to like share some of those specific pieces with people in this group to like inform the language that we're defining next week around batch and lot?
Yeah, hopefully we'll have everything up here within the next couple of business days.
So. Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Whew.
Again, and this is part just to let everybody know, anytime we get items submitted, and I know we've put it before into the chat, and as far as for submission, that if we're getting hundreds of pages, that means it's going to delay in getting posted, because we have had situations in the past, for example, where people sneak or leave accidentally inappropriate language. And so it actually has to all be reviewed prior to getting posted, and that can delay posting if it's really long documents. And I think I've mentioned before in this particular group, but if I haven't, my apologies, where we will get submissions that are hundreds of pages, and we have to go through all of that before it can go up. So we ask that it be targeted and that we not get large documents that have that, because otherwise we're not going to be able to provide them in a timely fashion to the committee, because they do all have to be reviewed. They will eventually get posted, but it can take time. So please remember that we want to keep things focused so that we're able to review items, for the committees, and that the committee can have it and the board members can have it. But when we get items that are hundreds of pages, they have to be fully reviewed, and they have to, before they can actually be posted, because they are public. It is a public site and public document, so we have to watch out for it.
So
And sometimes, by the way, it's very inadvertent. So don't think that we're thinking people are doing it on purpose.
Of course.
Although that could happen.
In that document, there is citation links to scientific papers and existing research. Is it better for you if I retain and like say I write the glossary
Greg,
and then submit the?
I need you to come wrap it up, buddy.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. Just
perhaps an email to answer all these questions might be more pertinent. Or
well, we've gotten it from several people, Chris. That's why I just wanted to mention about the lengthy documents. So, just make sure to keep things focused. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we have a couple more people's comments here. Dan.
So something to think about. I've struggled with this, and my recommendation is to do random testing with clients for stuff like pesticides and metals and stuff like that. As a lab, we have not really done much in the licensed market, but we've bought products off of store shelves, medicinal ones, and have found metals and pesticides in those. So things like fly strips hanging from people's ceilings just to catch the flies will actually contaminate stuff, and we found that in cannabis testing. So rat bait poison around can be tracked in and or whatever, and that actually we can't even use that around our laboratory because it affects our equipment. Just a side note. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for all your insights and lessons learned from up there in Oregon. Really appreciate your time today. Shane.
Yeah, just quickly on contaminants and that kind of stuff. If we're going to ban them, how are we going to, are these things we're going to have to test for? And if we're going to be banning them and testing for them, we need to make sure that the lists match up, right? So, Dan could probably answer better on that. I mean, if we're going to say ban this particular fungicide, and I'm just using that as an example, but we can't test for that fungicide, what's the use of banning it? That's all. I'm just wanting to make sure we're all on the same page there, because I've seen that happen before where things get banned, but it doesn't. But since you can't test for it, everybody continues using it.
Right, and that's a great point, Shane. And yes, that is a part of one of the things that we've been talking about and thinking about.
Yeah, I think whatever testing requirements we do too, I think the Department of Health will always kind of retain authority to go in and do additional testing as required, and we'll get to that point in our and hopefully our next meeting, which is going to be on February 4th from 3 to 5. And the meeting after that is going to be on February 11th from 3 to 5. And I would like to have, or we need to have initial recommendations. And like I said, like me and Dominic have both said, that doesn't mean we have to have everything figured out, but we're going to submit initial recommendations from this outline to the board after that February 11th meeting. So, yes, super grateful for everybody's time and commitment to this process. And Dominic, did you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, just the last thing is for the public comments, we do need them for this record or this meeting record by Monday at 5 p.m. for us to include it in this. If it's submitted afterwards, can get included later on, but I would recommend then waiting until after the next meeting. And other than that, thank you, everybody. Great discussions.
All right, we'll conclude the meeting for today, and I can't wait to see you all next Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.